You know that feeling when you walk into a room and for just a second you think, maybe I belong here. But then almost immediately a little voice in your head whispers, who do you think you are? Yeah, that voice is a liar. I want to talk about confidence, not the loud, flashy kind that walks in and demands attention, but the quiet, steady kind that says, I know who I am and I trust myself to figure things out. The kind that lets you take up space without apologizing for it. And let's get one thing straight right now. Confidence isn't something you either have or don't have. It's something you practice. I learned this the hard way. A few years ago, I was standing backstage before a big presentation. I had done the work, I had the research, I was prepared, but as I stood there, heart pounding, hands a little shaky, my brain decided it was the perfect time to remind me of every embarrassing moment from middle school. Because that's how self-doubt works. It doesn't attack your abilities, it attacks your worth. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could listen to the voice that said, you're not enough. Or I could trust the version of myself that showed up anyway. That's the thing about confidence. It's not about being fearless. It's about being brave enough to show up even when you're afraid. Let me tell you something that took me way too long to learn. Confidence has nothing to do with being perfect. It has everything to do with being honest. We tend to think that confident people are the ones who have it all figured out, the ones who always know what to say, who never doubt themselves, who walk into a room like they own the place. But that's not confidence. That's a carefully curated performance. Real confidence isn't about proving you have all the answers. It's about being willing to say, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. I used to think that if I just prepared more, achieved more, became more, then one day I'd wake up feeling completely confident, like it would arrive in the mail. Congratulations, you're now a fully confident human being. But that day never came. Because the more I chased perfection, the more I realized that competence and perfection cannot exist in the same space. Perfection is rigid, it's exhausting. It's a moving target that keeps getting farther away the closer you get. And worst of all, it keeps you from showing up as you. Confidence, on the other hand, is rooted in something much stronger. Truth. A while ago, I was having coffee with a friend who had just landed her dream job. And she admitted to me, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm so afraid they'll find out I'm not as smart as they think I am. I laughed, not at her, but because I knew that feeling so well. I told her, you realize the most competent people I know say the exact same thing, right? Because here's the secret, the people who seem the most confident, they're not the ones pretending to have it all together. They're the ones willing to be real, to say, I don't have all the answers, but I trust myself to figure things out. And when you lead with honesty instead of perfection, something incredible happens. People lean in, they trust you more, because when we see someone being real, we recognize something familiar in them. We see ourselves. So if you're waiting to feel confident before you show up, before you speak up, before you take the next step, don't. Confidence isn't about knowing everything. It's about being honest enough to say, I'm here, I care, and I'm willing to try. I used to think confidence was a feeling, that one day I'd wake up, look in the mirror, and just feel it, like a switch would flip. And suddenly I'd walk through life with this unshakable belief in myself. But here's the thing, confidence isn't a feeling, it's a habit. We assume that the people who seem confident feel confident all the time. But I've had conversations with CEOs, artists, athletes, people who from the outside look like they have this whole confidence thing mastered. And you know what they tell me? I still doubt myself. I still question whether I belong. I just don't let it stop me. Because confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you build. It's like strength training. No one walks into a gym for the first time, lifts the heaviest weight and says, yep, I got this. Confidence works the same way. The more you show up, the more reps you put in, the stronger you get. And eventually, what once felt impossible becomes second nature. I remember the first time I had to speak in front of a large audience. I was terrified. My heart was racing, my hands were clammy, and I was convinced everyone could see how nervous I was. But I got through it. And then I did it again and again. And somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting to feel confident and started acting like someone who was willing to try. That's the secret. Confidence doesn't show up first. Action does. You don't become confident by standing on the sidelines waiting to feel ready. You become confident by stepping in, by doing the thing badly at first, awkwardly, imperfectly, and proving to yourself that you can. And sure, you're going to fail sometimes. That's part of it. But every time you get back up, every time you show up again, you send yourself a message. I can handle this. I can trust myself. I am capable. And that trust, that's what confidence actually is. So if you're waiting to feel confident before you start, don't. Start first. Confidence will catch up. I used to believe that confidence meant certainty, that the people who walked into a room with their shoulders back and their heads high knew they belonged, they knew they were good enough, they knew they wouldn't fail. And I thought, if I could just be that sure of myself, then I'd finally feel confident. But here's what I've learned. Confidence isn't about certainty, it's about trust. Think about it. How many times have you stepped into something new, a job, a relationship, a challenge, and thought, I have no idea what I'm doing? That little voice in your head starts whispering, what if you fail? What if you're not good enough? And because we don't feel certain, we assume we're not confident enough to do it. But real confidence isn't standing at the starting line, knowing exactly how everything will turn out. It's stepping forward anyway, trusting that whatever happens next, you'll figure it out. I remember working on a big project once, something way outside my comfort zone. I kept thinking, someone else should be doing this, someone smarter, someone who actually knows what they're doing. But the reality was, no one knows how things will turn out. No one has a perfect roadmap. What the most confident people do differently is this. They trust themselves to handle what happens next. And that trust, it's built through experience. Every time you take a risk, every time you show up, even when you're unsure, you prove to yourself that you can navigate uncertainty. That you don't need to know everything to take the next step. There's a phrase I remind myself of often. Clarity comes from action, not thought. You don't sit around waiting to feel 100% certain before you move. You move first, and the certainty grows as you go. So if you're standing at the edge of something big, waiting for the moment when you'll feel absolutely sure, stop waiting. You don't need certainty. You just need to trust that you can handle whatever comes next. And you can. You always have. The way we talk to ourselves matters. More than we think. I once had a conversation with a woman who was incredibly talented, smart, capable, the kind of person you just know has so much to offer. But when she spoke about herself, it was like listening to someone pick apart their own reflection. I'm not that good. I always mess things up. I don't think I'm ready. And I asked her, would you ever say those things to your best friend? She looked at me wide-eyed and said, of course not. But we do it to ourselves all the time. Here's the thing. Confidence isn't just about what you do. It's about what you tell yourself every single day. Because the way you speak to yourself, that's the way you show up in the world. If you tell yourself you're not good enough, you'll hesitate, you'll shrink, you'll second-guess every decision you make. Not because you're actually incapable, but because that inner voice, the one you've listened to for so long, convinces you that you are. But when you start shifting that voice, even in small ways, something changes. Instead of saying, I'm not ready, you say, I'm learning. Instead of, I always mess things up, you say, I'm figuring it out. Instead of, I'm not good enough, you say, I am doing the best I can and that is enough. And the beautiful thing about confidence, it's contagious. When we see someone own their space, not in an arrogant way, but in an honest, grounded way, it gives us permission to do the same. It's like they're holding up a mirror saying, you can do this too. I remember meeting a speaker years ago who had this quiet, steady confidence. She wasn't the loudest person in the room. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just sure. Not that she was perfect, but that she was allowed to be there exactly as she was. And watching her, it changed me. It made me realize confidence isn't about demanding space. It's about allowing yourself to take it. The way you speak to yourself matters. Because those words don't just live in your head. They shape the way you stand, the way you show up, the way you move through the world. And when you start believing in yourself, even just a little, you give other people permission to do the same. I used to think confidence was about being right, about knowing the answers, making the right choices, never stumbling. But the more I studied it, the more I lived it, the more I realized that confidence isn't about getting everything right. It's about being willing to get it wrong. Think about the people you admire, the ones who carry themselves with that quiet, steady confidence. They're not the ones who are terrified of mistakes. They're the ones who show up anyway, knowing they will mess up sometimes, but also knowing that mistakes don't define them. I once worked with a leader who had this incredible ability to walk into any situation, high stakes, big decisions, and say, all right, let's figure this out. No panic, no performance, just a deep trust in herself and the people around her. And I remember thinking, that's confidence. Not I know everything, but I trust myself enough to figure it out. The truth is, waiting until you have all the answers before you start, that's just another way fear disguises itself as perfectionism. If you wait until you're 100% ready, you'll never take the first step. And the only way to actually become confident is to start before you feel ready. I once had someone tell me, I don't try new things because I hate being bad at them. And I get it. Nobody likes that awkward, clumsy, what am I doing stage. But confidence isn't built in the moments where you have it all figured out. It's built in the moments where you don't, and you keep going anyway. Every time you try, fail, learn, and try again, you prove to yourself that you can. That failure isn't final, that you are more resilient than you think. And that's what real confidence is. Not perfection, not certainty, just a willingness to step forward even when you don't know exactly how it'll turn out. So if you're waiting for confidence before you begin, stop waiting. Confidence isn't a prerequisite. It's a byproduct. It shows up when you do. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's not reserved for the lucky few who seem to have it all together. It's something you practice, something you build. A high five yourself when you do anything big, such as make a move. And you don't build it by waiting until you feel ready. You build it by showing up imperfectly, awkwardly, sometimes even failing, and proving to yourself over and over again that you can. Confidence isn't about never doubting yourself. It's about moving forward even when you do. It's not about being fearless. It's about being brave enough to try. So whatever it is you've been waiting on, whatever step you've been holding back from because you don't feel ready yet, take it. Do it scared. Do it unsure. But do it, because confidence won't show up first. You will. Good luck, and thank you for being here today.